So this is still 1.9 continued. There's still, you got to wait till 1.10 to have a homework assignment. I hope you're not bothered by that. But this is more practice with understanding how to interpret function notation. So as a reminder, this is saying x equals 2 and x equals -3, and the directions are telling you what graph to use. So like this -3 is just a constant, goes with the problem. And you need to fill in the other pieces. So go to the f function, go to where x equals 2, and the y value is 2 at that point. It's implied multiplication, by the way. And then go to the g function. This is the g function. Left 3, that's the x value, goes down to -2. So then you can just do the arithmetic. -6 minus 2 is -8. Again, maybe it's worth noting that if there's a constant in front or the operation, it just stays the same. Now, you just kind of have to figure out what function you're looking at what x value. So we're looking at x equals 3 up 1. We're looking at x equals -1 for the f function, so it's down here. And don't forget, when you subtract a negative, it turns into adding. 1 plus 3 is 4. I hope this isn't boring for you. I hope you get it, without thinking much. So g of -2 is 0. F of 3 is 3. Well, 0 times 3 is still 0. And as I scroll, maybe I should put off to the side that this is my f function, this is my g function, so I'm not messing up as I move forward. There we go. So looking at, okay, here's our first composition function on these notes. On this video, I guess I should say. So as a reminder, do f of -1 first and leave g alone for a second. So as you do f of -1 first, go find the f graph, x equals -1, goes down to -3. And then go to the g function where x is -3 there, and go down to -2. So definitely a lot different than this answer. I don't know, I can't really compare them. But the composition function is a lot different than the multiplication problems. So same thing with the next one. Maybe I'll stick with the same colors. You're not doing f yet. You do g first, because you do the function inside of the parenthesis inside of parenthesis first. So g of 0, the g function, goes up to 2 at x equals 0. Now go to the f function where x equals 2 goes up to 2. Alright. This one's really the same. Find out what f of -2 is. Go to the f function over to -2, goes down to -1. And g of -1 goes up to 3. That's our answer. All of this is a lot of repetition. Feel free to pause the video at any point and do this on your own. Then come back and see if you get the right answer. I think I did even teach this at some point because students are like, yeah, I get it, can we move forward? But since I'm making videos, I have no problems doing this to help you. So f of 0 looks like it's -2. And then g function at -2 equals 0. Same thing with the next one. Do g first. G of -3 is -2. And then f of, I did this backwards. It looks kind of cool that I'm mixing up colors. -2 is -1. And then I kind of wish they had more dynamic of a problem, but it's okay. G of -1 goes up to 3, and then f of 3 is 3. And I think I kind of get to it in the next 3 problems that you can do, like g of g of g. You can do the composition function as many times as you want. You can do f of g of f. You can do g of f of g. You can use the same function over and over again. So don't be scared by that. So f of 3 is 3, and then g of 3 is 1. So trying to save some time here. And I don't have an answer key for this, so I hope I'm doing it right. well, I had an answer key for the first couple that I did correctly, but I sometimes make mistakes. F of 1 is 1, and then you do g of 1, which is negative 1, and then you go back to the f of negative 1 is negative 3. So everything I said in the first video for section 9 is correct, that you go right to left, but there might be another way that another teacher might explain it that might be better for you. So f of negative 3 is 1, so now you do g of 1, which is negative 1, but then you do g of negative 1, which is 3. So if you got a different answer, please write down your work, show it, and then when I see you again, please come and ask me. So how do we make this a little bit more dynamic is throw in another function. So what I can do is replace h of x in this equation with what it's defined as, x squared minus x. And then set it equal to this g of f of 1, which it does not look like we did anywhere up here. So I need to figure out what that value is. So f of 1 is 0, and then g of 0 is 2. So now we have a quadratic, and the expectation is that you know how to solve quadratics from Algebra 2. That's why we make you do this in this order. And what are factors of negative 2 that add to be negative 1? That would be 1 minus 2. So as you look at that, you would say, okay, well, my factors are x plus 1, x minus 2, and then using the zero product property that we've already talked about, we would say x equals negative 1 or positive 2. Those are your two answers to this problem. So throw in another one, throw in an absolute value function. So we have 3, absolute value of x minus 2 is replacing p of x, and then f of g of negative 2. Again, I don't think we did this one earlier. So go ahead and figure out that g of negative 2 is 0, and then f of 0 is negative 2. All right, and then what I would do is isolate the absolute value. So you would divide both sides by 3. And before you freak out and try to solve this, there is no solution. And here's my quick answer. Is the absolute value always gives you a positive answer. What situation will I have a value for x, subtract 2, absolute value, and get a negative? That answer is never. Another way you can look at that is with a graphing calculator, and you can just type in the equation y equals 3. I think there's an absolute value symbol here. There it is. X minus 2, you can close the absolute value, and then you want to see where that graph is equal to negative 2. And you can tell by my graph that the absolute value function never hits a y value of negative 2, and if they never cross, then there's no solution. That's another way they can visualize this kind of answer. Again, feel free to pause the video, double check that you completely understand before moving on. I think I'll at least start 1.10 because it's really the same thing. It's numerical, which means I'm giving you equations. And if you understood everything before, whether it's in parentheses, inside parentheses, or going right to left, the math is all the same. So if I were to ask you to find g of h of 4, well, you better figure out what h of 4 is first. Well, how do you figure out h of 4? That's your x value that you put in for the h function. So maybe I'll just show my work right here. Now 4 times 3 is 12, divided by 2 is 6, minus 2 is 4. So now I have to do g of 4. So that's telling me to go to my g function and plug 4 in for x. So we're looking at 1 minus 2 times 4. Order of operations says 1 minus 8, because you have to multiply to get negative 7. All right. And you may remember doing these types of problems in Algebra 2. I haven't taught from a textbook in Algebra 2 in a while, so I don't recall off the top of my head. Now this one is not a composition, because it's just an addition problem. So you do f of negative 2. Notice that there are 2 places to put your x's. Don't forget that when you square a negative, it becomes positive 4, but then you have the negative in front. So let me do this one in orange. It would be negative 4, and then 3 times negative 2 is negative 6. So we're looking at negative 15 for that function. And maybe I'll do this one in red. So p of 2, you got to put in for both these x's. So 2 plus 2 is 4. I should have known the bell was going to be ringing. 4 minus 3 is, oops. 2 is what I'm plugging in for x. 2 minus 3 is negative 1. I was looking at that 4 for a second. Yeah, so that is negative 4. Let me go ahead and that plus is still there, but adding a negative value stays that. So our final answer for number 2 is negative 19. Now here's another composition function. So you have to go right to left, figure out what g of negative 1 is first. Well, how do you figure out g of negative 1? That's plugging in negative 1 in for that x. I don't know why I put my parentheses so far away. So let me get rid of that. I think that's pretty obvious that is equal to 3 because it's 1 plus 2 now. So now go to your p function and plug in 3 for both of those x's. So you get 5 on top divided by 0. Uh-oh, that is undefined. We can't do that problem. And this is probably a good place to pause this second video, which ended 1.9 and started 1.10, and I will finish up 1.10 in the next video.